Fraud alerts are a crucial tool in protecting your financial identity, but there are many myths and misconceptions surrounding how they work. In this video, we'll break down the most common myths about fraud alerts, clarify what they actually do, and help you make informed decisions about your financial security. Whether you're worried about identity theft or just want to understand your options, it's important to separate fact from fiction. Let's start by understanding what a fraud alert really is and why it matters for anyone concerned about unauthorized access to their credit or personal information. One of the most widespread myths is that placing a fraud alert on your credit report will completely stop all forms of fraud. In reality, fraud alerts are a warning system for lenders and creditors, prompting them to take extra steps to verify your identity before extending credit. However, they do not guarantee that all fraudulent activity will be prevented. It's still possible for determined criminals to find ways around these alerts, so it's important to use fraud alerts as just one part of a broader security strategy. Another common misconception is that adding a fraud alert to your credit report will negatively impact your credit score. The truth is, fraud alerts have no effect on your credit score whatsoever. They simply add a note to your credit file, instructing potential creditors to verify your identity before approving new credit. Your credit worthiness remains unchanged, and you can continue to use your credit as usual. Some people believe that setting up a fraud alert is a complicated and time-consuming process. In reality, it's usually quick and straightforward. You can typically request a fraud alert online, by phone, or by mail with any of the major credit bureaus. Once you place an alert with one bureau, they are required to notify the others, making the process even easier for you. Many assume that once a fraud alert is placed, it stays on your credit report forever. In fact, most fraud alerts are temporary. An initial fraud alert typically lasts for 1 year, while extended alerts for confirmed victims of identity theft can last up to 7 years. You can also remove or renew an alert at any time, giving you flexibility based on your needs. It's easy to confuse fraud alerts with credit freezes, but they are not the same. A fraud alert simply asks creditors to verify your identity before granting new credit, while a credit freeze locks down your credit file entirely, preventing most new credit accounts from being opened in your name. Both are useful tools, but they serve different purposes and offer different levels of protection. Some believe that you must be a victim of identity theft to place a fraud alert. In reality, anyone who suspects their information may be at risk can request an alert. You don't need to have experienced actual fraud. Being proactive is encouraged. This makes fraud alerts a valuable option for anyone who wants to add an extra layer of security to their credit profile. A common misunderstanding is that fraud alerts prevent you from using your credit or opening new accounts. In fact, you can still apply for credit, loans, or other services as usual. The only difference is that creditors will take extra steps to confirm your identity, which may involve a phone call or additional documentation. Some people worry that placing a fraud alert will result in fees or charges. However, fraud alerts are completely free to place and remove with all major credit bureaus. This makes them an accessible and cost-effective way to enhance your financial security without any financial burden. It's important to know that fraud alerts are not automatically placed on your credit file, even if you've experienced a data breach or suspicious activity. You must actively request a fraud alert from a credit bureau. This means staying vigilant and taking action as soon as you suspect your information may be compromised. Many people think fraud alerts only apply to credit cards, but they actually cover your entire credit file. This includes loans, mortgages, and other forms of credit. Any creditor who checks your credit report will see the alert and be prompted to verify your identity, regardless of the type of credit you're applying for. Some worry that fraud alerts will make it difficult to use their credit or cause unnecessary delays. While fraud alerts do require extra verification, the process is usually quick and straightforward. Most lenders are familiar with fraud alerts and have efficient procedures in place to confirm your identity, so any delays are typically minimal. There's a misconception that only people with significant assets or high credit limits need to worry about fraud alerts. In reality, anyone can be a target for identity theft, regardless of income or financial status. Fraud alerts are a smart precaution for everyone, not just the wealthy. Some people worry that having a fraud alert on their credit file will make them look suspicious or financially unstable. In truth, fraud alerts are a sign that you're taking your financial security seriously. Lenders understand this and do not view fraud alerts as a negative reflection on your financial health. It's a common belief that only adults need to worry about fraud alerts. However, children and minors can also be targets of identity theft. Parents and guardians can place fraud alerts on behalf of their children to help protect their credit profiles from unauthorized activity. While fraud alerts are most commonly associated with the United States, many other countries have similar systems in place to help protect consumers from identity theft and credit fraud. It's important to check with your local credit bureaus to understand what protections are available in your country. Some people think that once a fraud alert is placed, it's difficult to remove or update. In reality, you can easily remove or renew a fraud alert at any time by contacting the credit bureaus. The process is straightforward and designed to give you control over your credit security. Fraud alerts are often associated with identity theft, but they can also be useful in other situations. For example, if your wallet is lost or your personal information is exposed in a data breach, placing a fraud alert can help prevent unauthorized credit activity even if you haven't been a victim of identity theft yet. Some worry that fraud alerts will create problems or extra work for lenders. In fact, most lenders have streamlined processes for handling fraud alerts and are accustomed to verifying identities. This helps protect both you and the lender from potential fraud, making the process beneficial for everyone involved. Not all fraud alerts are created equal. Different credit bureaus and countries may have varying rules, durations, and procedures for fraud alerts. It's important to understand the specifics of how fraud alerts work with your credit bureau and in your region to ensure you're getting the protection you need. Some people think fraud alerts are only necessary after a major data breach or large-scale identity theft. In reality, even small incidents like losing your wallet or receiving a suspicious email can be good reasons to place a fraud alert. It's better to be safe and proactive regardless of the size of the threat. There's a misconception that fraud alerts are visible to everyone, including employers or landlords. In reality, fraud alerts are only visible to creditors and lenders who check your credit report. They are not part of public records and do not affect your reputation outside of credit inquiries. Some believe that placing a fraud alert means you no longer need to monitor your credit. However, fraud alerts are just one layer of protection. Regularly checking your credit reports and monitoring your accounts for suspicious activity is still essential for comprehensive security. It's a myth that fraud alerts completely prevent new accounts from being opened in your name. Instead, they require creditors to take extra steps to verify your identity. If you provide the necessary information, you can still open new accounts, but with added security. While digital threats like hacking and phishing are common, fraud alerts can also protect you from traditional risks, such as stolen mail or lost identification. Any situation where your personal information is at risk can be a reason to use a fraud alert, regardless of whether the threat is online or offline. Some people feel overwhelmed by the idea of fraud alerts, thinking they're too complex to understand. In reality, fraud alerts are straightforward. They simply add a note to your credit file, asking creditors to verify your identity before granting new credit. Understanding this basic function can help you use fraud alerts confidently. It's a myth that placing a fraud alert once is enough to protect you forever. Fraud alerts expire after a set period, usually 1 year for an initial alert. You need to renew or update your alert as needed to maintain ongoing protection. Fraud alerts can help protect you from a range of identity-related crimes, not just credit fraud. For example, they can help prevent someone from opening utility accounts, cell phone contracts, or even rental agreements in your name. Their protection extends beyond just credit cards and loans. Some worry that maintaining a fraud alert is a hassle, but in reality, it requires very little effort. Once placed, alerts last for a set period and can be renewed or removed easily. You don't need to constantly manage them, making them a low-maintenance security measure. While fraud alerts are most commonly used by individuals, some businesses and organizations may also have similar protections in place for their financial accounts. It's important for both individuals and organizations to be aware of the tools available to help prevent fraud. Some believe that having a fraud alert means you've already been a victim of fraud. In reality, many people use fraud alerts as a preventive measure, even if they haven't experienced any fraud. It's a proactive step, not a sign of past trouble. While fraud alerts are placed with credit bureaus, their effects extend to any creditor or lender who checks your credit file. This includes banks, credit card companies, and even landlords or utility providers. The alert prompts all these parties to verify your identity before approving new accounts. Some people mistakenly believe that fraud alerts can take the place of strong passwords or other security measures. In fact, fraud alerts are just one part of a comprehensive security plan. You should still use strong, unique passwords and practice good online security habits. Even if you don't have an established credit history, you can still benefit from a fraud alert. Young adults, students, and even those without credit accounts can use fraud alerts to help protect their identities from being used fraudulently. Non-citizens living or working in the US can also place fraud alerts on their credit files. As long as you have a credit file with a US bureau, you are eligible for this protection, regardless of your citizenship status. Fraud alerts can help protect more than just your financial accounts. They can also prevent unauthorized use of your identity for things like cell phone contracts, utility services, and even rental agreements. Their reach goes beyond just banks and credit cards. You don't have to wait until you've been a victim of fraud to place an alert. In fact, it's better to be proactive and use fraud alerts as a preventive measure, especially if you suspect your information may be at risk. Even minor incidents, such as a lost wallet or a suspicious phone call, can be good reasons to place a fraud alert. You don't need to experience a major identity theft event to benefit from this protection. Fraud alerts can help protect you from both online and offline threats. Whether your information is compromised through a cyber attack or physical theft, fraud alerts can help prevent unauthorized use of your identity. While fraud alerts are an important security tool, they are not a guarantee that you'll never experience fraud. They add a layer of protection, but it's still important to monitor your accounts and practice good security habits for comprehensive protection. Updating or renewing a fraud alert is a simple process. You can contact the credit bureaus directly to make changes, and the process is designed to be user-friendly. This ensures that your protection can adapt as your needs change. You don't need to be a technology expert to use fraud alerts. The process is designed to be accessible for everyone, with simple instructions and support available from credit bureaus. Anyone can take advantage of this protection, regardless of their tech skills. Fraud alerts and credit freezes serve different purposes. While fraud alerts prompt creditors to verify your identity, credit freezes lock your credit file, preventing most new accounts. For maximum protection, consider using both tools together, depending on your situation. Taking steps to protect your identity is not a sign of paranoia. It's smart and responsible. Fraud alerts are a practical tool for anyone who wants to reduce their risk of identity theft. Being proactive about your security is always a wise choice. Now that we've debunked the most common myths about fraud alerts, it's clear that they are a valuable tool for protecting your identity and credit. While they're not a cure-all, fraud alerts are easy to use, free, and accessible to everyone. Remember, the best approach to security is a layered one. Combine fraud alerts with good habits like monitoring your accounts, using strong passwords, and staying informed about new threats. By understanding the facts, you can take control of your financial safety and make smarter decisions about your personal security.